I think in order for us to make life more affordable here, it has to start with lowering costs.
Here's the truth. Your healthcare costs are up 174% because Republicans repealed the ACA tax credits, because Republicans throw around tariffs like Mardi Gras beads.
Well, look, I think the Speaker of the House, any leadership roles are incredibly difficult. I certainly don't envy any of our leadership down there. But she's not only unwilling to come across the aisle and work with Republicans, she won't work with moderates in her own party if they don't support her radical vision for the future.
My opponent loves to throw around accusations just so that he could deflect from the facts. Y'all, the Republican Party moved the largest wealth transfer in history, giving the very top 1% $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, gutting Medicaid, which families with special needs children or families who have parents with dementia rely upon. They did all of this in order to be able to enrich their buddies and their cronies. And for the working class, middle class families that my opponent now talks about, peanuts. They gave us temporary tax cuts. Those tax cuts that my opponent mentioned, they fade out in 2028, in 2027. They will not help us in the long run. But those tax cuts to billionaires, those tax cuts to corporations, those $3 trillion added to deficits just so that we can enrich more billionaires across the United States, those are permanent, and those are going to hurt not only you, but your families. Don't fall for the wolf in sheep's clothing in this moment. He will talk a good game, but his actions actually speak the truth.
Oh, Micah, man, you're hitting the nail right on the head. I mean, look, this is a critical project. It's probably one of the areas I've been most vocal about during this campaign. The president has to stop playing games with something as important as this Gateway Tunnel project funding for us. It's too many jobs. It's too many commuters. Our district's a big commuter district. It's way too many commuters. And, this is an area where I've been very clear about the need for this funding.
It's only been 22 years since we've had ICE in its current formation. We can, in fact, protect our borders. We can, in fact, protect our security and not shoot Americans in the streets like we have in Minnesota. The truth is that our immigration system is very much broken. But ICE, we cannot nibble around the edges to fix a system that is broken on so many levels. It has a recruitment problem. It has an accountability problem. It has a training problem. It has an oversight problem. Instead of nibbling around the edges, what we should do is invest in a system that works for everyone. Judges, more security, the use of data that doesn't infringe upon your rights, and most importantly, we don't need armed thugs running around our streets shooting American people just for exercising their First Amendment rights. This is not logical. And for everyone listening, you know that this is not the America that we wish to live in or raise our children in. We shouldn't have armed thugs that have such immunity that they act with impunity, shooting American people.
These are positions that are radically out of touch with a district that has a thriving Jewish community that is made less safe, more dangerous by this extreme rhetoric. It has to stop. It's one thing to stand with our allies in Israel and to stand with our Jewish community, as I do, but we have to call out the normalization of this anti-Semitic rhetoric. It has to stop, and I won't stand for it or let it continue in this race.
He will stand here and say that he fights for housing affordability, and he sneaks in that he fought the construction of 95% of affordable housing in his town. That's not fighting for affordability. That's the opposite. This is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He will say whatever you want to hear. His Republican policies have made it harder. How? Tariffs, cutting tax credits, giving tax breaks to billionaires, and then telling you that we can't afford healthcare. I won't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but I will fight for you to ensure that your families have a fighting chance. I know that this district is diverse. This district cares about people. We want you to cut our energy costs, and don't let data centers get a better price just because they have a nice relationship with a Republican president or maybe Mr. Hathaway. My opponent only thinks about one group of people, but here are the truth. This district is very diverse. There are multiple socioeconomic communities, and we need to be able to address all of their needs. Mr. Hathaway only seems to care about the most well-connected, but the bottom line is I've spent 25 years fighting for working families and middle-class families, and that's the fight I will take to Congress.
Well, sure. Look, if we're talking specifically about Iran, I mean, I've been clear on this from day one. You know, I am of the opinion under no circumstances can Iran be allowed to have a nuclear weapon or have the capabilities to create a nuclear weapon. And look, I would love to see diplomacy work if our military believes that action is needed to ensure that that doesn't happen. And I support it. And by the way, I think we've been incredibly effective in that mission up to this point. Right, we've seen our air superiority, our drone superiority, neutralizing sites, neutralizing enemy forces, and hopefully, according to Secretary Rubio, right, looking like the end is coming close. So I hope that is the case and that we accomplish this mission very soon. I certainly don't want to see us have to put boots on the ground. I think we're doing a very effective job through the air, and it's important because our allies in Israel are at stake. It's American lives that are at stake.
Many of your fellow progressive Democrats, including some in New Jersey, have described Israel's actions in Gaza as a genocide. Do you agree with that characterization?
Again, I think I've been very clear on my position here. And I understand that many individuals are feeling conflicted about what we are seeing in Gaza. But here is the bottom line. 80% of Gaza is in rubble. Can we agree that that is wrong? Can we agree that cutting the electricity to water desalination plants is not only wrong, but it goes against the Geneva Convention and it is a war crime? Can we agree that we can see that Benjamin Netanyahu is moving policies that actually undermine freedom and peace in the Middle East? The truth is that Gaza is under incredible pressure and driven by the policies of Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, I stand by the fact that I've called Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal. I believe that criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu and his administration is not anti-Israel any more than criticism of Donald Trump is anti-American. Neither man deserves a blank check or a blind eye when man, woman, and child, innocent civilians, are fair game to his destruction. We have to be able to tell our closest ally when a line has been crossed.
Do you think that there should be any conditions placed on the aid that the U.S. gives to Israel?
No, we don't condition aid for our allies.
That as a member of Congress, I would use every legislative power at my disposal to protect the rights of Jewish constituents and convene spaces to educate and to fight anti-Semitism because I know it's real. I am an Afro-Latina living in the United States. I know how dangerous othering is, but that doesn't mean that we cannot call the question on violations to international law and human rights. What my opponent is in fact telling you is that he is criticizing me for upholding international law. He is criticizing me for upholding the Geneva Convention. He is letting you know that he would allow Donald Trump to threaten the same, which he has to Iran, as he is telling you that he would allow Donald Trump to break international law, to wholesale punish every man, woman, and child, that he will, today it may be undocumented immigrants and Palestinians, but tomorrow it can be you because Joe Hathaway will not stand up to people who will break the law and crush human rights. I wouldn't support illegal and endless wars. I wouldn't support to go into war without a plan to keep Americans safe. I wouldn't support the idea of just bumbling in like we have. Now, here's what we need to be able to defend. We have to make sure that we're upholding democracy, that we're upholding the safety of the American people, and that we are standing with our allies. I will point to that in this moment, the Republican Party, Donald Trump, and people like Joe Hathaway are doing the exact opposite. This war is in fact increasing the power of enemies of democracy. We have lifted sanctions on Russian oil, providing them a windfall that they're using to further crush and further intimidate Ukraine. We've told our allies across Europe that they have to stand alone because we will not stand with them.
What is the star principle you would promise her you'd follow before putting her child in harm's way?
Well, look, I think when America leads through military strength, I think the world's a safer place. I think our men and women in uniform are the only reason for that. They are the backbone of our strength, of our dominance around the world, and of American prosperity. And I honor every single servicemen and women and their families for making that incredible sacrifice. And listen, I trust our military leadership to make the right decisions on behalf of our country and our safety. So, when we see things like what's going on in Iran, we believe we have the ability to ensure that we're keeping Americans safe, keeping our allies safe. And let's be real, a nuclear-armed Iran is a threat to the entire world. So keeping the world safe by engaging militarily to stop this kind of regime from engaging in nuclear war manufacturing, I think that's a good thing. And I think our servicemen and women are protecting American people when they do that.
I believe that we have to have the kind of government that looks out for human beings. You asked me a question about Jesus. I'll tell you this. In Luke chapter 8, verses 43 to 48, Jesus speaks about women's health care. In John chapter 4, verses 5 through 30, Jesus speaks about protecting immigrants. In Mark chapter 6, verses 30 through 44, Jesus speaks about feeding the hungry. In Matthew 25, verse 35, he speaks about caring of the poor. In Matthew 25:36, he speaks about the incarcerated. And most importantly, in John 13, verse 34, he speaks about loving each other like we love ourselves. Who won the 2020 election? Would you have voted to certify those results? And if Donald Trump tries to steal a third term, can you tell us what you're going to do to stop him?
Joe Biden won the 2020 election. If Donald Trump tried to run for a third term, which is against the U.S. Constitution, I would push back in every single way allowed for me by law to do so, Ms. Mejia. That is what it means to be a common sense next generation Republican. These aren't the conversations that I believe we should be having anymore at this point. And I understand why. But we have to focus on the things that are most important, right? We have to acknowledge those things, that Joe Biden won the election and that Donald Trump and any American president needs to serve 2 terms. Now we got to move on and focus on the issues that matter.
He's trying to lull you into thinking that he's a common sense moderate. But here's the truth. Joe Hathaway, when I was fighting for raising the minimum wage, Joe Hathaway was helping Chris Christie spin Bridgegate. When I was fighting to ensure that your families had justice in a workplace, Joe Hathaway was fighting to keep affordability out of your home. When I was fighting to ensure that every vote would count, he was silent, because here's the truth. In the end, if you send Joe Hathaway to Congress, he's going to vote like a Trump. He sounds like a Trump, and he'll just be more Trump. You could try it all day, but here's the bottom line. Your actions speak much more than your words. You can say that it is radical to believe that people shouldn't ration their medication, their insulin, or that they shouldn't have their health care. You could say that it is radical to invest in public education or to teach history because it happened. You say it's radical to say that people shouldn't exercise their First Amendment rights and that it is okay to be shot in the street by rogue agents.
Yeah, well, hey, look, and maybe this is an area where Ms. Mejia and I find a little common ground, right? Look, I think generally speaking, the federal government should be less involved in people's personal lives and their personal data, certainly when it comes to something like the U.S. Postal Service. And I think Ms. Mejia brings a point up, right, where you see this moving more and more into the digital space, into online. And look, I'm a dad with little ones at home. I know Ms. Mejia is a parent as well. And I think that also extends into the social media space. And we need to be doing things to make sure that AI and these algorithms that are, addicting kids to social media and I think going way, way too far there and leading to self-harm and other really bad situations needs to be curbed. People have a right to their individual freedoms. They have a right to their own data and their own safety. And I think our kids, we need to be fighting for them as well as we see this new kind of technology coming into play. It's Congress's job to set those guardrails and make sure that we're protecting individual data and protecting our kids online as well.
As I mentioned, we have SALT tax deductions that were increased, but they end in a cliff in 2030. The temporary reprieve on tax on tips is also going to fade away. I think that we have to fight to restore tax fairness so that the wealthiest amongst us are paying their fair share. It's not right that middle-class families end up paying a larger percentage of their income on taxes and are getting less out of their government than the billionaires and corporations. I would fight for tax fairness. I would fight for the SALT tax deduction to be permanent. I would fight fight for energy tax credits. I would fight for ACA tax credits.
Well, look, I like seeing the SALT cap increase, being quadrupled. I'd like it to be gone completely. I think that's what our district needs. I know Republicans in my party were initially the ones who put the SALT cap in place, and I disagree with that too. It's bad for the district. It's bad for the everyday people here in New Jersey.
Here's the bottom line. When I go to Congress, I will fight for working families. The truth is that you are paying more because in this last year because of Republican policies and that big ugly bill. Again, we talk about tax fairness, but it is a bait and switch, my friends. Again, the most wealthy in America, the top 1.1%, got close to $100,000 in tax breaks. The average family in New Jersey's 11th got about $1,900 in tax breaks. But you know what else you got? Gutted Medicaid, gutted, no more ACA tax credits, no more energy tax credits, an increase in gas bill. Again, you are paying more, but they're telling you that somehow you're better off by giving billionaires almost
Joey, what are we
$100,000 in
doing?
tax cuts, and you get pennies. If we want to talk about the company we keep, think about the fact, again, he voted 3 times for Donald Trump and used to work for Chris Christie. I think the company he keeps means something. He takes pictures with insurrectionists.
And what improved safety, long overdue safety on our roads across Route 10 was bipartisanship between me as the mayor and Governor Murphy and his DOT to get things done that are making our community safer. That's what can actually happen, Ms. Mejia, when you have people who are willing to reach out.
Yes, when you have
talk to people
Democratic
about-
leadership.
Ms. Mejia,
You're right.
I have not interrupted you once, as you have spoken over and over, bell after bell after bell. The fact that you would jump in when I'm trying to talk about my record at the local level with my residents is a disgrace, and it is why you are unfit to run for this office.
I
Ms.
think your
Mejia,
anger is
given
showing.
the-
My opponent got very angry just a moment ago because I pointed out that when Democrats are in leadership, we end up actually investing in infrastructure and programs in our departments that make your life better. And when Republicans are in office, and this you can look up, you end up doing worse. Why? Because the first thing they do is give tax breaks to corporations and billionaires at your expense. We got to stop that. It doesn't make sense.
Well, thank you to the moderators. Thank you to the Globe, Ms. Mejia. Thank you for participating this evening. For all the viewers, look, you just heard 2 very clear, very different visions for the future of our district and for our country. You know, Ms. Mejia was unable to say why Jesus is a socialist or answer questions about socialism or the people who bankroll her campaign that expose anti-Semitic values. We ran a campaign and a message tonight about practical, independent leadership and serving constituents with empathy and with humility. That's how I've governed already, because it's how I was raised by 2 parents who knew the value of hard work and service to others. Now, unfortunately, about 2 weeks ago, we did lose my dad. And as I think about his upcoming services, and I think about the folks who are going to be in the room, I think a lot about his old Army buddies who will be there. I'm sure many of them in their red Republican hats. But I also know his friends from community theater will be there too, who could not be more liberal Democrats. But they're both going to be in the room because my dad was someone who cared much more about the kind of person that you are over the politics that you believe in. He knew what was most important: your integrity, your honesty, and your willingness to put the needs of others before your own. My dad's character helped shape the man that I am. I hope it'll shape the congressman I become. And I can promise you that if I'm blessed to go down to Washington on your behalf, that I will remember my dad each and every time I cast a vote. And I will always, always put the needs of our district before anything else. I'm Joe Hathaway, and I humbly ask for your vote this April 16th. Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to first thank you all for this evening, and thank you, Joe, for the spirited debate. I am running for Congress, again, for everyone listening, because like you, I am very tired of the madness in our political system. I'm tired of the cowardice. I'm tired of the inability and the reluctance to do what's right out of fear or corruption. Like you, I know we can do better. I'm trying to raise my family in New Jersey's 11th congressional district, and I am finding it harder every single day because the policies of this current administration and its supporters, like my opponent, are making it harder for our daily life. Like you, I can see that Donald Trump may be one of the most dangerous presidents in generations, and the last thing we need to do is send him another yes vote to Congress. There are moments in time in which people of good conscience have to take a stand. They have to stand up for what's right, even if you're going to be faced by angry name calling. I have spent 25 years working on behalf of justice, of freedom. I've helped raise wages for millions of Americans and New Jerseyans, and I stand on principles. And if you pause to consider, you know you share many of these. Everyone deserves a shot. Healthcare should be a human right. People shouldn't ration their healthcare or their medication. We don't have to crush each other to get ahead. My name is Analilia Mejia, and I am a mom. I am a policy advocate. I'm an organizer. And if you send me to Congress, I am going to stand up for you because I know what's right. It's not left or right. It's right versus wrong. If you believe in that, join me. Go to my website, Analilia for NJ, and join us.